Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. In the first story, we'll tell you about the tenants who made trouble, but did it legally. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. My old boss owned a rental property. He had a dispute with some tenants and evicted them. The terms of the lease required that the tenants redecorate the property when they left. There had been some bad feeling about it. The tenants were unhappy with my boss and vice versa, but they agreed to comply with the terms of the lease. When they left, he went to inspect the property and found they had redecorated as required by the lease. Every wall, every window frame, every piece of wood, and all the ceilings had been carefully painted in black. The lease hadn't mentioned anything about what colors they should use. He was actually quite amused by this, although it cost him more to undo their work than it would have had they not done it. Black is a very difficult color to decorate over the top of. And our second story. Time for my own tale of revenge. Many years ago, my now ex-wife and I decided to upgrade from the small single-story home we were in and find something with more space for us to spread out. We had her late-teen son living with us, our 3 Rottweilers, plus I needed a dedicated study for my work. I'm in technology and often worked from home. After months of searching, we found our dream home. Beautiful 2-story, 4-bedroom plus study with huge amounts of space everywhere. Seriously huge. The laundry was bigger than my bedroom growing up. The quality of everything was amazing. Square set walls, no cornices, polished Tassie oak flooring, floor to high ceiling windows in the living areas, and 2 walls comprising commercial-grade bistro doors that opened up an entire corner of the house onto the covered outdoor entertaining area. The standard of the build was no surprise. This was a display home up until it landed on the market. We were to be the first people to live in it. I'm going to gloss over months of details and pain, but we had problems with the place from day 2, literally. On night 2, the plumbing under the ensuite shower gave out and leaked through the kitchen ceiling underneath it. A couple weeks later, during a monster storm, 3 of the light fixtures upstairs started leaking water. A month later, we noticed rust starting to show through the rendering on the corners of the house. There were heaps of smallish, easy-to-fix problems, but the kicker was that the balcony adjoining the master bedroom at the front of the house actually started to sag down, to the point that it was unsafe to go out there due to risk of collapse. We were mostly amenable and nice through most of this. The vendor, also the builder of course, was a small business and we had no interest in making life any more difficult than it already was for a small business owner. But conversely, we were pouring a lot of our hard-earned money into the mortgage and we wanted what we paid for. But for his own reasons, the builder just kept making it difficult to get things fixed. There was a seemingly endless list of excuses for not turning up at the agreed times, a non-stop torrent of blame directed at his subcontractors, and just plain crappy behavior, like dodging our calls and not responding to our emails. Of course, we started proceedings with our state's Consumer Affairs Department. After all, we were entitled to a statutory 7-year warranty on a new home, but that process takes time. Time throughout which we were forced to endure issues like water leaks, a dangerous balcony we couldn't use, and a whole host of other issues that meant we weren't enjoying our home. There shouldn't have been any dispute about his responsibility to fix these problems. He just chose to be a jerk about it and make us go through the government process, presumably thinking we'd give up before he was forced to do anything. At around the same time, we started getting the occasional knock at the door, only to open it and find a couple standing there with a brochure in their hands, and our house pictured on the front. The first few of these conversations ended with us politely explaining that this was no longer a display house, it was our home. Without exception, they all apologized profusely and went away. After a month or so of this, I started to wonder, how was it that people still thought our house was a display home? I went looking and discovered that the builder's website still had our address listed for display. Despite repeated calls and emails, they steadfastly refused to remove our address from their website. This irritated the crap out of me. These people would often come knocking on weekends because that's when people go house shopping, right? But our pleas for the builder to update his site simply fell on deaf ears. Enough was enough. An idea had formed. Did I mention I was in technology? First thing I did was scrape their website and set about the task of creating my own version of it using their exact look and feel. I highlighted every single problem we'd found with the place. Every glamour shot was replaced with shots of the exact same feature, but showing the problems we had. Rust showing through the rendering, water leaking from the light fixtures, close-ups of the sagging balcony, etc. You get the idea. By the time I was done, I had what I felt was the perfect alternate version of their site, one that highlighted every single defect in the home, as well as calling out all the problems we had in dealing with the builder. I even included testimonials that were simply copies of the bullcrap emails and texts we received from the builder, avoiding his responsibilities and making lame excuses for not fixing our problems. The headline testimonial was the one where he responded with, "So just don't go out onto the balcony," when I pointed out the clear safety risk it represented. After getting a lawyer friend to check through each page to make sure I wasn't opening myself up to some form of legal action, he helped me change a few sections, chuckling the whole time. I put the site up, hosting on some cheap and cheerful hosting provider Google told me about, offshore of course. I also registered a close but not close enough to be sued domain name to reach it. The next step was to create some actual collateral for execution of my plan. After all, there was no point going to all this effort unless I was actually able to direct people to the builder's website. So I took a copy of the brochure for our house that the builder had conveniently left a few of behind in one of the kitchen drawers and set about creating my own version of it. Similar principles as the website, no contact information except the website address. My website address. By this time, I'd made good friends with a few of my neighbors, and we'd taken to sharing a beer or two most nights on our front lawns. And wouldn't you know it, one of them was a manager for a local print shop. Given he already knew what hell we'd been through with the builder, he took very little convincing to print off a run of my brochure for me on beautiful paper stock, nice and glossy, professional. I think it cost me half a dozen beers. Then came the final step in my plan. I waited. I waited for eager couples to turn up on my doorstep, eyes wide in wonder at the beauty of the home they were going to pay the builder for their very own copy of. For the next 6 months or so, whenever one of these couples would turn up and knock on my door and explain their purpose, I'd let them know that this model home was selling so quickly that the builder had asked if I could hand out his updated brochure so potential buyers could go online and look up whatever the current display home address was. I don't know how many brochures I handed out. Of the 100 my neighbor printed for me, I probably only had 2 or 3 dozen left, but I know I also handed a bunch out to mates so they could have a laugh. I'd estimate close to 40 prospective buyers got a copy of my brochure, and I reckon at least 15 to 20 of those came back to thank me for warning them. A few of them had already signed conditional contracts and managed to get out of them one way or another. I don't know what happened to that builder in the end. I split up with the missus not too long after, and she sold the place not too long after that. At the time of this writing, the builder's website is gone, the domain still appears to be registered in the company's name, and their state business registration still appears to be active. As best I can tell, he's no longer at the last known address for the company, and I can't find any mention of the company online that isn't at least 6 years old. Hopefully the effer is out of business now, and hopefully the few dozen people I helped sidestep the pain of dealing with them were the beginning of the end in his crappy little enterprise. Fantastic. Shame about you and the missus splitting up. I hope it was something else than this house thing. Best of luck in the future. And our last story. That time I got my boss fired and took his job. I was 17, working at Dunkin' Donuts for 2 years at this point, and had a new manager. He was really cool, easygoing at first. After about 6 months, he started making gross comments to the girls that worked there. I heard him say to a girl who was a couple years older than me, "Damn, you really filled in today." She just chuckled. I was on the other side of the store, but was wondering, WTF I just heard. This same girl I'd hang out with outside of work, and he'd text her sometimes chatting, which was not okay. She knew it, but didn't care. It was her boss. He's not doing anything wrong. This guy had a massive tattoo of his 2 daughters on his shoulder, so that was a big, I feel like I can trust you deal for me. But he was starting to creep me out, and I was genuinely thinking I was overreacting. One day, after talking to him, I turned around and walked away, and he whistled at me and says, "Damn." I turned around and said, "Please stop, that's not okay." He was pissed. I could tell, but didn't say anything. The next day I come in, my hourly schedule was changed from 40 hours a week to 25 hours, and that day he said I'd be dish duty. His tone was aggressive, as if my dad was reprimanding me, but then he'd turn around and be Mr. Nice Guy to the other girls. First of all, I'd been working there longer than everyone else working there. I basically trained that manager. Also, there's no such thing as dish duty at effing Dunkin' Donuts. The only thing that kept that day going for me was when the usual customers came in and wondered where I was, and the manager had to say I was in the back. Little did he know, I knew my customers very well, to the point where if I saw them pull into the parking lot, I'd start getting their usual coffee order ready so they could have it right when they walked in. Because of the time this saved those customers, they'd get to leave their house a couple minutes later, so when they walked in and had to wait in line, they were pretty upset. I get home frustrated because basically my boss cut my hours in half and forced me to wash dishes all day because I didn't have the reaction he wanted after whistling at me. This was not going to work, so I called the DD corporate number, told them everything, and said I didn't know who else to call about it. They said they'd handle it. The next day we're all working, me in the back again. Corporate-looking guy came behind the counter and said the manager's name, asked if they could sit and talk. It was some corporate guy, the guy who owns the Dunkins in my town, and my manager all sitting at a table in the lobby area. Naturally, I have to see what's going on, / is this because I called corporate yesterday? I go stand at the register, right in front of the table they're sitting at. I see my manager look over at me with his eyes, and I was screaming a big F you in my head, hoping my thoughts somehow teleport to him. After 10 minutes, they all stood up, and the manager walks out right there. The guys came to the register and asked if my name was working. I said, that's me. The corporate guy said I did the right thing to call and report everything and that he won't be coming back. I was offered the manager position the next week, and the boss went on to manage Taco Bell. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.